Join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, would someone like to approve the minutes from the previous meetings on October 9th and October 30th, unless there's any additions or corrections?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member, citizen, will make a request to remove it, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered separately in its normal sequence on the agenda. What's your wishes?
I'll move the consent agenda.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, we've got a number of people here. A lot of you are here tonight for West Avenue and Willow. We're going to be getting to you here shortly. But right now, we're going to have Paul Steinman with Springstead. He'd like to appear before the Finance Committee and the City Council, tell us tonight about the state of our condition. Paul?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. I'm Paul Steinman with Springstead. This morning at 9:30 a.m., we took offers on your bonds issued in the amount of $3,955,000. On the bid tabulation that you have before you there, as shown there was 28 underwriters or bankers interested in buying a piece of what Detroit Lakes was selling today. They rolled up into 3 bids, the winning bid being Robert W. Baird and Company and Syndicate at a true interest rate of 3.52%.
Is there any questions for Mr. Springstead at this time?
One additional item, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just mention that the part of the process of going through a bond sale is to have a credit rating call from Standard & Poor's. And Standard & Poor's did conduct a rating call and a rating assessment and reaffirmed its AA long-term rating on your general obligation debt. So with that, I recommend award to Robert W. Baird at 3.52%. I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions at this time?
Just to point out something in the Standard & Poor's report on our rating here, they noted Detroit Lakes economy, good financial policies and practices, strong budgetary performance, strong budgetary flexibility, and strong liquidity in awarding us that AA stable rating, which is a very good rating for a city. So.
Okay, thank you, Don. Then, right now, there's a consideration of resolution to awarding the sale of general obligation bonds of Series 2018A in the original aggregate principal amount of $3,955,000, fixing their form and specifications, directing the execution, delivery, and providing for the payment. Is there a motion in then?
Yes, Your Honor. This came before the Finance Committee. We looked at the amount, what it was for. We've already done these projects, North Lawn Lake Project, Lake Forest, and County 131. We looked at the interest rate, sale, and so forth. We recommended, the committee recommended approval, and I so move.
Second.
This motion, and then we have a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
This motion carries. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank
tonight. Have a safe trip back to the city.
Thank you very much.
At this time, we'll move to item 5F. Call on Bruce.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, this is a matter of providing a variance to allow 86 parking spaces, allow backing directly into a public alley, and to not provide landscapes, the required landscape screening between a commercial and residential district for 1210, 1214, 1218, and 1240 Washington Avenue, Midtown Development. The normal parking requirements would be 90 spaces. The Planning Commission and the Community Development Committee reviewed this and recommends Approval subject to the conditions that you find in your packet, that the project be constructed as shown on the approved site plan, that the owner obtain a land disturbance permit prior to issuance of a building permit, that the owner obtain a Pelican River Watershed District permit prior to issuance of a building permit, and that if requested by adjacent landowners on Lake Avenue, the owner will provide fencing and landscaping screening within the bounds of the city screening requirements. Such request must be made prior to November 13th, 2019. Before I move on this, Your Honor, I do think we had a question at Community Development and Planning about the stormwater requirements, and I don't know if we have an answer to that. Jim?
We don't really have an answer other than Pelican River Watershed has tabled their final review until you all give your final review. So we don't have a final report from them yet, but we don't anticipate any significant issues. Oh, we have an update.
Well, I'm Eric.
maybe you wanna-
Identify yourself.
Yep,
please.
Eric Gunderson. I'm part of the Midtown Development. And with not having that approval from Pelican River Watershed, I asked More Engineering to attend today and be here for you guys to answer any questions. They're far along in their process. They think they have a good plan. They started with the Pelican Watershed District in step one and say, how do we do this? So I know they've been working together from day one. And these gentlemen are here, and I believe they can answer questions if you guys have any concerning the civil engineer and the Pelican Watershed.
Yeah, I think, Eric, the question was that when we looked at the site plan, it wasn't identified readily that we could see on there where the stormwater was. We didn't know if it was a surface or if it was an underground system you guys were using.
Okay, I'm gonna often defer to these guys on that.
Evening, my name is Brandon Buckles. I work for More Engineering. Currently, we have stormwater discharging into 4 separate pretreatment chambers, and there's 3 iron enhanced sand filters, if you will. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Are they on the surface of the property or are they underneath?
They are on the surface.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
We couldn't see that on the site plan when we looked at the plan commission. That was a question.
Yeah, so all the water's being, pretreatment chambers are more or less a street inlet, and it just gets conveyed through these pretreatment chambers, and the water then gets into the soil filter, and that percolates through to under drains, which will then discharge into the public storm.
So with the idea that number 3 is that the owner obtain a Pelican River Watershed permit prior to issuance of building permit, I move for approval of the variance.
Okay, there's a move for the approval of that variance. Is there a second to that motion? Is there any discussion at this time? So there's a consideration for a resolution approving the variance to allow reduced parking spaces from 90 to 86, allowing parking directly to and from the alley and not providing and not provide landscape screening between commercial and residential district at 1210, 1214, 1218, and 1240 Washington Avenue, Midtown Development, along with these other stipulations with the stormwater, and also that would have to match up with the Pelican River Watershed District.
Yeah, just a clarification, Ron. So the issue about the screening, that's obviously as a council, we've encouraged that between these commercial residential districts, but just for clarification, council, there really only had one person show up to the planning commission, and their issue wasn't even the screening issue. They just didn't want the project to be done. So we wanted to allow folks on Lake Avenue, if they did hear about this project and wanted to do the screening, give them some chance to come back to do that. But we also wanted to limit it to a time period, so it wasn't 2 or 3 years out where somebody said, hey, can you come plant a tree for me? So that's why you see that condition 4.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. So if there's not any other questions, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. At this time, we'll adjourn our regular council meeting for public hearings, and the first one I'm going to go to is item A, And that's a public hearing to give and receive public comments on the proposed streets, sidewalks, stormwater, sanitary sewer, and water main improvement project for West Avenue and Willow Street West. At this time, I would encourage people in the audience who have any questions about this project, to please come forward to the mic and identify yourself and ask your questions.
Do you want me to give a present?
John, you want us to present at this time too? Excuse me.
I sure can. Why don't I do that? And then if you have questions after I get done, we can go from there. As the mayor indicated, or the vice mayor indicated, oh, we're waiting for a presentation. Here we go. Just so I can get a feel, how many people are here from West and Willow? Okay, and how many weren't here for the informational meeting that we had? Okay, fair amount of you. Okay, then I'll go through this. Much of this is the same information that we had here about a month or two ago, but what we're talking about at this hearing is the proposed improvements, street and utility reconstruction to portions of West Avenue and Willow Street. The reason we do these, it's primarily twofold. One, it's another opportunity for public to engage with city and provide some input and comments and questions on the project. And then also we're required by state statute, anytime we have a project that involves special assessments, we have to hold a public hearing as part of the process. So I'm going to go through the existing, the needs out there, some of the deficiencies, what we're planning to do, the estimated project costs and financing, funding, the assessments, a little bit on schedule and next steps, and then we'll leave a period for comments and questions after I'm done. So again, this is West Avenue. It's really West Avenue in its entirety from Willow Street up to where it dead ends by just south side of Highway 10. We have included a number of side streets off of West that were added to the project that we felt like if we didn't do these now, it could be some time before we get back to do them. So we've got portions of Holmes, a little bit of State, Main, and Grant in there. Then in addition, we've got Willow Street from Washington Avenue to Jackson, including the Jackson Avenue lift station. So a little bit of a background on this. These projects, particularly West, have been on the city's radar and on the capital improvement plan for a number of years. In fact, they've, again, West Avenue has been deferred a number of times over the course of time. In 2017, the city council authorized a preliminary engineering report and facility plan to do some initial examination of the projects and looking at costs. That was used to submit some funding applications to Public Facilities Authority that the city is pursuing. And then finally, in May of this year of 2018, the city authorized us to start preliminary design. So you saw the survey crews out there gathering information in the field and things of that nature. That allowed us to start putting together preliminary layouts, which we had at the informational meeting that provided a little bit of detail as to what we're going to do. We held that public information meeting in September, and what we're ultimately shooting for is a construction project in the summer of 2019. I'm not going to dwell on the existing conditions. In general, they're pretty evident, I think. Probably one of the biggest drivers is just the condition of West Avenue in itself. It's frankly, in terrible condition, far beyond any sort of rehab or anything like that. It's in awful shape. Right now, it's a 40-foot wide urban section. Willow Street is better, but not great. It's better than West, but that doesn't say much. Right now, that's a 36 to a 46-foot wide urban section street, depending on where you're at. We have some stormwater deficiencies on both of these. On West Avenue, primarily, we lack some inlet capacity, which leads to some localized flooding on adjacent properties occasionally. Willow Street, we've had some breaks and failures in that collection system over the last several years. Sewer and water, quite simply, this is some of the older infrastructure that we have in town in this area. I don't know exactly when all of it was put in, but we're looking at stuff that I think portions of it are pre-50s. It's some of the oldest stuff we still have in town. We've got our miles out of it, so to speak. It's cast iron water mains, clay tile sewers. There is some concrete trunk line sewer on West. I'd point out that West Avenue is a very, very integral portion of our collection system. About 70% of the city's wastewater ultimately ends up getting channeled down west before it heads to the treatment plant. So that's a large line that carries a lot of sewage for us and is very important. So proposed improvements. The water main's fairly straightforward. We're going to pull out the water main that we have and replace it with 8-inch PVC water main compared to the 6-inch, so a little uptick in size. It'll be PVC mains, new valves, new hydrants, complete replacement. Sanitary sewer is generally the same. We're replacing with PVC pipe, new manholes. Some of those mains will get to be pretty good size. We may be up to about a 30-inch main on West Avenue. We have to finalize that and look at projected growth and things like that, how the city's going to grow to size that. We've got some crossings under the CP rail line that we're going to be looking at possibly replacing those as part of this project. And then we'll also be replacing the Jackson Avenue lift station as part of the work. Service laterals, so for both sewer and water, we'll be replacing the service laterals. Generally, it's a 1-inch water service, HDPE or plastic water service pipe, 1 inch in size, and a 4-inch sewer service. We replace those from the main out to the edge of the right-of-way or to the edge of your property. We don't go all the way to the house. We go to the edge of the property or the edge of the right-of-way. It's the property owner's responsibility to make any replacement from the edge of your property to your home or structure if needed. That's not something that's required. I would urge people to, investigate that or consult with a plumber. Now would be a good time to do it, certainly, but that would be something that you would need to contract. Storm sewer and drainage, not tons of change. We're going to replace it as needed throughout the project area. We're going to expand the collection system on West Avenue and add some inlet capacity in an attempt to reduce some of the flooding that we have in some of those areas. May try to incorporate some treatment on West Avenue. Currently, that water gets discharged. A lot of it gets discharged, I should say, directly to wetlands without any sort of treatment. So we're going to try to incorporate some of those things. On Willow Street, it's really just a matter of replacing what's there. A street and sidewalk, you'll have to bear with me here. Things get kind of all over the board, but we're looking at a 40-foot wide urban section south of Holmes Street on West Avenue. So on West, from Willow to Holmes, going to a 40-foot wide road, which is slightly narrower than what's there right now. And then Holmes Street to the north, looking at a 36-foot wide road, which is our standard road width for local type roads that we use in subdivisions. It still allows for parking on both sides. It's just a little bit narrower. We don't feel like we need all of that width. There are some of those side streets that I mentioned, some dead end side streets, State and Grant in particular. They're just dead ends, very, very low volume, just a few houses on them. Those will probably go down to about a 28-foot wide road, either rural section or urban. Urban being with curb and gutter. That's just something we haven't quite ironed out yet, and certainly open to some comments from property owners. Looking at a 6-foot sidewalk with roughly a 6-foot turf boulevard between that sidewalk and the street on both sides south of Holmes. Currently, it's a little spotty. Their sidewalk just kind of disappears and ends, but would be on both sides of West from Holmes down to Willow, and then on the west side only north of Holmes. It's similar to what's there. We're just trying to get a continuous system put in. We're also going to put a sidewalk that came out of the public input meeting on Main between the new Holmes Street and West Avenue. There is that trail over on West Avenue, and there was a suggestion of providing a sidewalk so if people wanted to cross there, it would provide access over to that trail. Which certainly seemed like a logical idea. We'll be doing an overlay, just an overlay on Main between Holmes and West in that same section. The curb will remain, but we'll mill out the surface and put a new one down. Willow Street, we'll be looking at a 44-foot wide urban section west of Roosevelt. So Washington to Roosevelt, 44-foot wide. That's, again, sort of our standard for parking on both sides that has a fair amount of parking on it on both sides. Be able to do that in most places. 36-foot wide urban section east of Roosevelt. That's a lower volume road, and we think 36 is appropriate there. And again, a 6-foot sidewalk, 6-foot turf boulevard, both sides of the road, west of Roosevelt, over to Washington, and then just the south side of Roosevelt, just the south side as we go east of Roosevelt. So between Roosevelt and Jackson, just a sidewalk on the south side. Currently, there is none. Few comments on some specific changes that I want everybody to be aware of. This is mostly on Willow Street. We're changing up trying to make some improvements really to some of the intersections, hopefully alleviate a little bit of the congestion that happens at different times. So at Willow Street, on Willow Street, we're going to add dedicated turn lanes at McKinley and Roosevelt, meaning we're going to try to get some left turns put in there. So at McKinley, we're going to incorporate a dedicated left turn. There's quite a bit of turning movement that happens as people go up McKinley now, since that's a direct shot up to Highway 10. So adding a turn lane there so through traffic can continue on. And then at Roosevelt, we'll be adding some left turns as well on some of those legs, just to help try to improve some of the traffic flow for some of the predominant movements. We may have some raised medians particularly at the McKinley intersection, and also at Washington. I want to back up here. We'll have a raised median there. Notice for a number of years, the city has put up sort of seasonally plastic delineated tubes to prevent that left turn into M&H, because that ends up backing traffic up through that intersection. The idea would be to put a permanent concrete raised median in there to just sort of solve that on a permanent basis. To some degree, we're going to be setting that intersection up for signals. At some point, we need to redo that Washington intersection and redo that signal system. That could be coming here in the next 3 to 5 years. So we may be doing some stuff geometrically to set that up. That might be a little bit goofy for right now, but there is a larger plan in place. And one of the biggest changes that I want people to be aware of, we are proposing to remove the stop condition at Lincoln. There's certainly a history of why that stop sign was put in, and I think for good reason at the time. I think a lot of things have changed since that time. We don't have the full school there any longer. It's not a four-way intersection any longer. We don't have the alley. The predominant movement through there is straight through on Willow. There's very little traffic coming on and off of Lincoln. So we felt like removing that condition was probably the right move. At that location, we'll also be adding in some crossing nodes, because we are going to construct a trail segment that I'll talk about in a minute down Lincoln. So at that particular intersection, we're going to bring the curb lines out a little bit. That's to help facilitate the crossing, number one. But number two, I think that helps keep speeds tempered. I mean, that's the side effect of removing a stop sign, is there could be a tendency to get moving faster through there. But the nodes coming out do have an effect of trying to temper speeds and calm traffic a little bit. So I think I covered all this. Here's the nodes I was talking about at Lincoln. We'll have that trail crossing there. And the trail is going to go all the way up to Oak, where we left off with the trail in 2013. So ultimately what we're trying to do here is provide a connection down to the trail. It goes through the Sanford property, and the city's also got the rest of the trail down to the pavilion scheduled down at CIP. So we're just trying to continue that trail network down towards the beach, and then ultimately carrying it through the beach area as time goes on. So a few construction things. I don't want to dive into the weeds on these. We'll have additional meetings probably prior to construction on, but things to think about. There will be some tree removal. We don't want to cut down any more trees than we have to, but there are certain types of trees that are good to have in the boulevard and certain ones that are not. Some of those have really deep root systems and can wreak some havoc on sewer lines and things like that. Those will be going. Some of them have to be removed to facilitate street construction or the underground utility construction. Temporary water service, as we replace the water system, we'll have to connect people to a temporary water system, usually through your outside hose bib or some other means. to continue water service to your house while we replace those water lines. Access, we will do our very, very best to maintain access. And generally speaking, you will have access to your property, but it is construction and there are times that create some challenges and difficulties there, but we'll work through that with you. You'll be notified in advance of when that stuff's gonna happen. So we do try to do a lot of communication during these types of construction projects, either in person with our staff out in the field, or progress meetings, email blasts, social media, city website. We try to get it out there. So, and then turf restoration, everybody just really needs to be patient. The grass will not be looking like it does right after we're done. It takes a number of years to get that grass to be full and green, and we need everybody's help. And we'll provide some more information on that once we get closer to construction. So most of the improvements are going to be made within the right of way. We may need some temporary easements from a few people to make some of these improvements. If we have to get back onto your property to grade out a driveway so it ties in nice to the new street and things like that, we'll obviously be reaching out to those people when the time comes. But by and large, we'll be working within the right of way and just be looking at some temporary easements. Costs, probably what everybody's most interested in. Without going through this line by line, the largest cost we have in the project is of course the streets. We're upwards of about $3 million in street improvements, roughly $1.3 million in stormwater. That's a pretty soft number at this point. We have a lot of work to do to figure out exactly what we're going to do with stormwater yet. A little over $1 million in sanitary sewer improvements, $665,000 in water main improvements, and about $500,000 on the lift station. So in total, we're looking at about a $7.3 million project. So this is a pretty sizable project, even by city comparisons. This is one of our larger street and utility projects that we've taken on in the recent past. So how do we pay for it? The project's funded by a combination of different things. Of course, there's city utility funds and general tax levy that help to go pay back the project. There's what we call municipal state aid funds, because we're a city of over 5,000. Effectively, we get a little slice of the gas tax funneled through MnDOT, through municipal state aid funding, and these are both municipal state aid streets, so that we can use those funds to help pay for a portion of those improvements on the streets and the sidewalks and things like that. I mentioned earlier we had applied to Public Facilities Authority, both for water and sewer improvements. It's two separate programs, but we're looking to Public Facilities Authority to help us fund portions of the water main improvements and the sanitary sewer improvements. There's a sort of, I would call it a slight or an outside chance that we maybe could get some grant money out of one of those programs. We won't know that, frankly, until we get as-bid costs and submit the final part of the application to PFA. And then another component is special assessments to the adjacent properties. So the portion of the project cost that's assessable, that's determined by the city's special assessment policy. They have a policy in place so that project to project, we're trying to treat everybody as uniformly as we can in breaking out the costs and how much is assessable versus how much is borne by the city. A quick summary of that: sewer and water. We assess 75% of the standard water main and standard sanitary sewer costs. So for both of those, that's considered an 8-inch main. And if you recall, we have some very large mains, particularly on the sewer on West Avenue. We've got some stuff that's 20 or 30 inches in diameter. So the city has a substantial share in some of that sanitary sewer. City assumes 25%. Any of those oversizing costs that I'm talking about, anything beyond an 8-inch main, they absorb the cost of anything beyond those standard main sizes. Hydrants. Service laterals are generally assessed at 100%. Street and sidewalk reconstruction are assessed 50%, so half the cost of a standard street. Again, we use that word standard. It's a 36-foot wide, 5-ton road. For purposes of residential properties, that's the basis that we assess on. Any oversizing that's required for additional width or additional structural capacity to get it up to, say, a 10-ton road, which these roads will be, the city assumes that, and 50%. Mill and overlay, 75% of the cost is assessed, and the city picks up the balance. City also pays 100% of the costs related to the multi-use trail along Lincoln, all of the sanitary lift station and force main costs, and all of the storm sewer costs. So what this all means, and again, I'm not going to go through the entire table. This presentation, I'm sure we'll put on our website, so don't feel like you need to feverishly write down notes. We'll get it up on the city's website. But all said and done right now, what we're looking at is of the $7.3 million project, about $2.7 million would be assessed, and about the city picking up about $4.6 million. So how do we allocate that assessable cost? So again, we go back to the city's special assessment policy that spells out how do we spread that $2.7 million out amongst the adjacent property owners. Generally speaking, each of those cost categories for sewer and water and street and services, they're divided by the number of assessable units that we have available to us to determine a rate. So sewer and water is assessed on a front footage basis. You're assessed for the short side of your lot, so the width of your lot. For an interior lot, it's just the width of your lot. If you're a corner lot, it'd be the short side of your lot. If you have an irregular shaped lot, we try to assign an average width to it. And so we take all those assessable units, divide our sewer, our water costs by that, and come up with a rate per foot. Service laterals are assessed on an each basis. Street is somewhat similar. Interior rectangular lots, you're assessed for that width or that dimension that's abutting the improvement. Rectangular corner lots, assuming that there's an improvement on both sides of you, you're assessed for the short side of your lot, that's your frontage, then half of your side lot up to 150 feet. Anything over 150 feet is added on. So you can get up to a 75-foot credit on your side lot. And again, that's assuming that you have an improvement on both sides. You're only assessed for the side that's improved. Irregular shaped lots, we look at an average dimension again. So this is what that all shakes down to. Street and sidewalk for a standard width street, I'm talking West and Willow and Holmes and Main. You're looking at about $108 per foot. For those low volume dead end side streets that I was referencing earlier, they're narrower, looking at about $67 a foot. For the mill and overlay on Main Street between Holmes and West, about $41 a foot. Sanitary sewer is about $39 a foot. A sewer service is just shy of $1,800 each. Water main, about $43 a foot. And then a water service at about $2,200 each. So here's some typicals just to try to give you some generic examples. If you have a 50-foot lot on West or Willow, kind of those standard street widths, 50-foot lot would be looking at a total of assessment of about $13,500. 75-foot lot, about $18,000. 100-foot lot, $23,000. Of course, there's cases that go outside of these, but this is the vast majority of them. Those low volume streets, those dead end streets, about $11,000 for a 50-foot lot, $18,000, well, just shy of $19,000 for a 100-foot lot. In the mill and overlay, a 50-foot lot would pay $2,000. 100-foot lot would be about $4,100. Assessments work this way. We would have an assessment hearing next spring. We hope to get the thing designed, get it out for bids, get our as-bid cost back, because at this point, these are my estimates. The real costs will be determined by contractors. We bid the project out publicly, take the low bid, and then we'll have actual numbers. We would have an assessment hearing likely in April of this coming spring in 19. You'd all be mailed notice and an actual copy of a worksheet that states your specific assessment at that point. Then ultimately, assessments are levied against your property starting in 2020. So a little over a year from now. They would go on your property taxes, assuming you don't make any sort of prepayment. They'd go on your property taxes for likely a 20-year term. The council ultimately sets the term and the rate, but likely a 20-year term. Interest rates, That's established based on the market. What the city can borrow the money at, typically we're a percent or two higher of whatever we can get it at to cover issuance costs. Historically, we've been in that 5.5. Is that, I mean, as of lately, 5.5-ish. So we'll have to wait and see what the market does on that. And then you are able to prepay all or a portion of your special assessments if you want to or have the ability to, and that of course reduces interest charges. So project schedule, I've mentioned a lot of this, try to get this thing designed in the winter, bid it somewhere around March of this year, assessment hearing in April, like to award that construction contract no later than May. I'd like to speed this up a little bit if we can. And then looking at construction, pretty much the duration of the summer on and off. We'll obviously have the project phased and staged such that you're not enduring an entire summer of construction, but the project as a whole is going to take the whole summer to complete with multiple construction crews, frankly. And we'll likely come back and do a final wear course paving in the following spring. So the spring of 2020. Probably in June, come back and put that last lift on. We like to leave that last lift off until we go through a freeze thaw cycle and kind of work out some of the wrinkles in the pavement. We'll have some additional meetings one-on-one with people as needed. Property owner questionnaires have been sent out. If you need another copy, let me know. I have some copies with. The reason we ask for that information primarily is to get contact information. You can't look people up in phone books anymore. And it's really helpful if we have emails and phone numbers so we can get a hold of people and communicate different things with them, particularly through construction. So you can call if you have questions or needs or specific concerns. With that, I'll turn it back to Vice Mayor for questions and comments.
Good report. I know a lot of you have questions, so now is the time. If you have any questions about this project for John, would you please come to the podium and give us your name and your address? Please come forward if you have any questions.
My name is David Brazy. I live on 623 West Avenue. Questions I've got is when you're talking about redoing the sewers and that, when they're digging them up and they do find a problem that's not your problem, will they let us know?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, if we see something, we're obviously would communicate anything we see.
Okay, and then like the trees, because I live on a dead end too, on State and West,
Okay.
and there's only two of us on that street. One, I think I got one apple tree that's, I don't know how far back from the street you go in.
We on State Street, so you're to the east
I'm on the,
east
I'm
side.
on State and West Avenue, right in that corner.
State doesn't go west, does it? To the west of West Avenue, does it? It does. Oh,
It goes on both sides.
oh, it's on both sides.
It's on the east side.
You're on the
Yeah.
east side. We will be going we're going all the way through that because I believe we've got a major sewer crossing going under the
Yeah, I
railroad
remember
there.
that, But on West Avenue, where the sewer connects, I think I got one apple tree that's probably from the curb. I'm
Okay.
guessing like 10 or 12 feet in. You won't be going that far in.
I'll tell you this, I'll find out. I've got a guy from my office back here that's been working on it. We'll look into it and actually see him before you leave. He's in the black back there. Quietly, incognito.
And then,
And he can get your number. We'll follow up.
okay, and then I have another one that's on the corner, but I'm hoping you guys can get that road shut down.
I would love to vacate that road. So you're one of two people I need to.
Yeah,
Did I talk to you at the hearing?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I am not planning on, as of right now, I need to talk to your counterpart across, but I would like to vacate that road, as we talked about, and build you guys separate driveways, and we get rid of the road, you don't have it alongside of you. We'll keep an easement, obviously, for the utilities, but that is my game plan.
Yeah, and then like that fire hydrant, if you do close it down, I mean, you gonna leave it there or move it up?
We'll get it out of there.
I mean,
We'll get it out there. There's no point.
Move it up forward, it's fine.
Yeah,
You know?
I would not have one back there because we wouldn't have a public roadway going back there any longer, so I'd like to get rid of it.
And then, I know like the trains, we talked about that. I mean,
Yes.
That's a big,
It is a big deal.
now it's gotten better again, but the thing is there's been a few times now, I know in October it was awful, that you couldn't even use Main,
Mhm.
Holmes, Willow's emergency route, and even all the way down to Snappy Park.
Right.
You couldn't even get across for 3 hours.
No. It is, what I'll tell you on that is, I agree, you're not wrong. I'd love to fix the problem. We're going to attempt to the degree the railroad will listen to us, do that. The good news is that we will have the railroad's attention here, because I'm going to have to get quite a few permits for working in the right of way, getting pipes under the railroad tracks. And then I did forget to mention that we are at least dipping our toe in the water as a city and having an evaluation done on a quiet zone where it would be whistle free. I don't want anybody to get preconceived ideas that this is a done deal. We're looking into it with a consultant that is going to evaluate what would it take. If the steps are relatively easy, it might be something we'd be incorporating over the next year or two, potentially as early as next year, but we'll have to wait and see. So my point is, we're going to have some time with the railroad coming up here, and we'll be working with them, and I'll be expressing the need to keep one of those open.
At one of these meetings to hear what, I mean, a lot of us have to deal with. I mean, noise to me, I could care less. It's them blocking traffic.
Yeah, I don't think I can make any assurance that I can get anybody from the railroad to do anything. They kind of do what they want when they want, but I will certainly carry the message forward, because I agree. I mean, I've had the same inconvenience. I don't live there like you guys do, but it's duly noted, and I'm going to try to see what we can do about
And
that.
the other thing, I mean, I don't know how many are here that's listened to it. When they have their service cars or whatever that fix their rails or whatever, or their engines, they sit there all weekend and you hear whistles and pressure valves and
Okay.
whatnot all night long. And
Sure,
I've called and complained many times,
sure.
you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
we all need sleep.
No,
Fine, can
I
get
sympathize. No, I do. The railroad can be challenging to deal with, but all of your concerns are things we're aware of, except that last one, and I certainly will try to talk to them.
But I know, like with the train deal, with them stopping, I mean, like if I have to park in the back alley, because you said you're gonna probably open up that gate for
Yep.
now and all that, if I'm parked back there, there's a train stop, I can't get to work if I can't
Right.
get across,
Right.
you know, West Avenue. I'm stuck there till they,
No. Yeah, my wishes would be, if they're gonna stop there, to at least leave one crossing open, you know,
would be
one.
nice.
So you would think that would be possible and not that difficult, but that's something I'm gonna try to talk to them about. I will, so.
And I don't know if, my wife had brought in our questionnaire or not, because we forgot to bring it last time,
I
so.
think I have yours. I know I do.
Okay.
Yep.
So
I remember it. No, I think I have it. So, very good.
that's about all I have.
Thank you.
Okay, Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to have a question for John at this time? Please come forward.
Hello, my name is Natalie MacArthur and I'm with Greenlaw Homes. We own a lot on the corner of State Street and that new road that was put in. And I would like to invite you personally to meet me at that lot to figure out a solution to the mess that was created by the road that was built with the new project. We intend to build a single-family house on that lot. And with that new road improvement that you put in and did not put in an access point from that road, the only way into it now is from State Street. And by its very design, it is just not conducive to build the house that we had intended to build there. So I really don't know how to proceed as a builder with that situation. And so I would like to invite you, John,
Sure.
to meet me at that lot to figure out a solution to that. Just because it makes sense for us to do it in the spring, because there's not an existing water or sewer line to that lot.
Sure.
And then you've got the dead end stakes, you know, before that new road.
Sure.
So would you be willing to
No,
do that?
absolutely. Yep. Do I have your contact information?
You do.
Okay,
And
I
I'll
thought I did.
remind you in
No,
case
I
you
thought I
forget.
did, but I wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you. I will.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for this project? West Avenue and Willow, any other questions? Please come forward.
Justin Walkminster, 1112 West Avenue. Have you guys done like a traffic survey or anything like that, the street, to actually see how much traffic the street receives?
I have some traffic counts on the street because it's a municipal state aid street. MnDOT actually does the counts for us. I think it's every 3 years. So we do have those numbers. Did you have a specific question as to what they are?
No, I
or-
was looking forward and you're talking about planning ahead and stuff like that, what's the street?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some traffic changes is what I tell you as a broad comment. It's
definitely gone up
changed.
since you guys have done the road over.
I think the south end, that's probably a true statement. The north end, I think, has actually gone down.
Probably.
Just simply because most people buck off at Home Street there. But I think it has gone down, up on the south end. So, the roads that we're proposing are certainly very adequate for the volumes that we're seeing and then what we're projecting through there. So,
As you said, the conditions of the road are terrible.
Mhm.
I mean, you guys haven't done anything for maintenance on it in years. I mean, we've lived in our residence for 3 years, and it's been horrible since the day we've moved in.
sure.
Brandon, how long you guys have gone without having to do any maintenance or anything like that? Is that going to be taken in as a factor with assessments to reduce costs you have had on this road with not having to put any money in it for so long?
I can't say that's a factor that's calculated into the assessments per the policy.
So why has it been neglected to this point?
I think part of the reason is, at least over the last couple of years, to be perfectly honest, I don't remember the specifics or the dates. This project has been brought forward before, and we've got pretty strong resistance from the neighborhood of not wanting to do things, and that was part of it. As of lately, it's gotten into be such poor condition. There's almost nothing you can do short of ripping the pavement off and redoing it. There's nothing's even sticking to it anymore because there's so little left. And we knew that we were going to have to pull the trigger on this thing this year. So I think, Public Works probably has been backing off on their maintenance simply because it's coming to an end and there was nothing they could do.
Right, but we are upon winter time, and at a certain point, it does come to a point of public safety and actually being able to navigate the road in the winter. I mean, it pretty much is worse than a gravel road.
I won't argue with you. I agree. And that's why we want to get it done. So that's what we're shooting for. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, are there any comments on this project? Any comments? If not, the public discussion is closed, and then this time, is there have any questions, Councilman, on this project? Bruce?
John,
Yes, sir.
Willow east of Roosevelt, is there any thought of leveling out that hill there? Is that going to be a little bit something?
Very little. I was hoping for more. It's certainly steep. I don't like it. We were hoping that we would have some opportunity to maybe take a few feet out of it. The reality is, with proximity to houses, driveway grades, garages, and things like that, our ability to improve it is pretty nominal. We are getting it down a little bit, but to be fair, I don't know that most people are going to notice it. It's somewhere around a half a foot, I think, in one end. The other end, we're able to take down a little bit more than a foot. So it's a very nominal improvement.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because, of course, it's somewhat of a safety factor.
Absolutely.
Factor.
Absolutely. Yeah. To be honest, the only way we would be able to correct it would be probably to start buying property. So.
Mr. Pratt, quick question. You touched on a 5-ton road, which is standard, which would be assessed. Anything above that would be on the city's shared pickup.
That's correct.
You mentioned that there was some sections of the road that's going to a 10-ton
All of it.
capacity, the whole.
Because
Thank you.
because it's a state aid road and we receive state aid money, those gas tax dollars I was talking about, that's a requirement
Gotcha.
of having it funded by state aid, is they have to be a 10-ton route.
Okay, thank you.
So it's both West and Willow?
Correct.
Okay, very good, thank you.
I have someone that has a very limited frontage, like 15 feet on West and Campbell, and they were wondering, is there a minimum? I don't know if it's 15 feet, but it's definitely much less than 50 feet. There isn't 50-foot minimum.
This is a triangular shaped lot, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. You're those guys. No, I did look at that. It'd probably be best if I give you guys a call. No, I would not assess you normally. I mean, if it was just this little point, but your sewer and water come off of West, from what I can tell, based on our records, which means you'll get assessed for sewer and water on it. You have a very pie-shaped odd lot. We take an average width of that way back, and I have it calculated. I obviously don't have it with me, but I could certainly tell you guys what that is, show you how I'm calculating that. but you will get assessed for sewer and water. I don't know about street. I gotta look at that a little bit. That's a really unique scenario. Yeah, and we go back to kind of average widths and things like that, but
marker.
okay,
They moved that down.
okay,
You know, so
Yeah.
our neighbor thinks their line is on one and we think it's on another.
common. No, but give me a call. My numbers was up there somewhere. I can give you a card, but,
I probably should have asked the question because.
or Craig knows how to get a hold of me too, so.
Yeah, but, because you're gonna be so close to our property there on Campbell.
Mhm.
If there's any, and you're talking about underground, that's 50+ years ago.
Mhm.
If you run into a problem there and something has to be done right away in Campbell, then things all change for us.
Right. Yeah, we should be able to make our replacements without creating too much of an issue there. But obviously, if we see a problem, we're going to fix it, on the spot. Campbell isn't in a lot better condition. There's just more need than there are dollars to go around. But I suspect
Surface isn't so bad.
the surface isn't quite as bad, but the underground utilities are not in any better shape. So,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Jay.
Any other questions or comments from the council members? If not, is there a motion for consideration to resolution ordering the proposed street, sidewalk, stormwater, and sanitary sewer and one-way improvement project for West Avenue and Willow Street West?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just want to say, I am going to vote for it, but I still object to removing the stop signs and.
Okay, note that in the minutes, please. Okay, any other comments? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And if you would excuse me for just 1 minute, I'd like to have Jay, have you go to item 6G. We've got Mr. Berquist here and I'd like to, I don't want to have him sit here for a couple hours for these public hearings, so we'll go forward with that.
Couple hours?
Consideration to a resolution accepting a preliminary engineering report for future development of streets and utilities to the Berkowitz subdivision, land on Long Lake Road adjacent to St. Clair Lake, owned by Becker Development LLC, and setting a public hearing for Tuesday, December 11th, 2008 at 5 p.m. Public Works recommends approval and I so move.
Second.
Motion the second. Any comments on that? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. Okay, now we'll go back to the next public hearing. Public hearing to receive, to receive public comments on the matter of annexation of 60.3 tract of land in Detroit Lakes Township and zoning tract, I-1 light industrial at County Highway 21 Cleveland Farm Atkins Equipment parcel number 08-0391-000, also 08-0394-000, also 08-0393-000-08-390-000, and the easterly one half of County Highway 21. I'm gonna call on Larry Redmond to give us an update on that project.
This is a 60-acre tract of land that's 100% surrounded by the city boundaries. So the city council can approve annexation ordinance to annex this property. It's urban and suburban in character. It should be annexed into the city. It includes the Greenwood property, the Atkins property, and the Cleveland property.
Okay, at this time, I'm gonna ask if there's anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this project for annexation. Is there anybody here that would like to have a question about this project? Will you please come forward, use our do. Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Larry Lighthizer at 1210 Richwood Road. I'm across from across from the north end of the property of Atkins. Just a couple questions, couple concerns. Is there a plan in effect for the Cleveland Farm in the regard to the southwest lowland area? Would that be developed?
There are currently no plans for development. If it's a wetland, we can't develop.
And is that considered a wetland?
I have not done a study to see if that's a wetland or not. It certainly appears that a significant portion of it would be.
Okay.
We haven't delineated.
Well, it's inevitable that it's going to happen sooner or later. I know that was the plan for the Cleveland Farm initially. I'm empathetic with Atkins because I know what their property taxes are going to do. Is that my problem? No, but I know what my property taxes did. They went from $1,600 to just under $5,000 for a house built in 1982 on 7.9 acres of land with 40% lowland. Am I sore about that? I have a hard time wrapping my brain around it. I don't live on Pelican Lake. I don't live on Lake Melissa. I don't live on East Shore Drive. But I do like where I live. And I like my community. There's a couple things that I'd like to see done better on Richwood Road. If it is part of Detroit Lakes, I'd like to see it looked at as part of Detroit Lakes, part of the city. Trust me, I'm not gonna take long with this. But for one thing, when garbage and brush are brought from town, you know, it can sit there for days, weeks, or half the summer. Nobody picks it up. And if it's part of Detroit Lakes, let's take the same pride in it that we would on East Shore Drive or Summit Avenue or Westlake Drive. Just because the tourists don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Or a dead deer. And the reason that there's probably a dead deer is because people are still driving 55 to 60 miles an hour when they approach from the north. My driveway is well into the 45 mile an hour zone, but it's hard to get out of my driveway because people aren't slowing down. And I'd like to see people slow down. 20-some years ago, I tried to get a sign there for men and equipment crossing because it's almost like traffic would challenge that crossing. And we couldn't do anything because there'd never been an accident. And I mean, that's done with, but point being, people aren't slowing down on that road. And that's why they hit deer. That's why it's hard to navigate sometimes. Richwood Road has gotten a lot busier than it was 20 years ago. So I'd like to see something done about that. I'd like to see something done about the eroding bike path that's full of upheavals and weeds and chuck holes. You know, we have nice infrastructure around the new jail. We have nice bike paths in other areas. I'd like to see that maintained like it is actually part of the city of Detroit Lakes and not some distant entity from Detroit Lakes. Because if it is truly part of the city, I'm paying my annexation costs, I'd like to see it treated that way. And not just in the way of taxation. I guess that's about what I've got.
Thank you for your comments, and I understand what you're saying about the bike trail, because I live out there, and I also live right off of Richwood Road, and I do know that the police department and highway patrol have been pretty steady on Richwood Road just the last 4 or 5 months, so they are trying to pick up speeders out there, because it was getting to be a racetrack, so they are trying to attempt that, but
In their favor, I will give them the benefit of the doubt there that I have seen a pickup in that, in the frequency of patrols and some pullovers. I do agree with you there.
Thank you for your comments on that.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions of this project? If not, the public part is through then. Right now, does the city council have any questions for Larry on this project?
Ron, just an observation, Mr. Lannizer pointed out about the road, but just to be clear, Richwood Road is a county road, trail is a county trail. So I think certainly it would be great to talk to Don Scarry, who would be your county representative out there. We'd love to see that fixed up, and your comments, I think, as far as compost and stuff on the road, Brad, I started taking notes, and I think part of it too is just calling. I know when we got a dead deer out on South Shore, I'll call up Public Works and let them know, and they usually get somebody out there. So, but yeah, the can't do much about Richwood Road unless we can get the county on it. So.
Good point. Any other questions on this project by the council? If not, is there a motion for consideration?
Your Honor, I would move after discussion at the Community Development Committee that we consider the first reading of ordinance 434 for the annexation of the 60.3 acre tract of land at County Highway 21. And I so move.
Is there a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I've got another quick one to come up. I see that Scott Walls and Kerry Johnson are sitting in the audience, and I know they're here for the ice harvest deal for the Trail Lakes Committee. They want to just say a few words, if they could come forward and have their comments on this.
Hi, good evening. Scott Walls with Kerry Johnson from the Ice Harvest Committee. I spoke earlier today at the Public Works Committee and with a little bit of an update on where our plans are. Everybody was apparently excited and happy with what we did last year and wondering what's going to happen in the future. We had a little bit of a public informational get together last night at the hub. I had some people come, but wanted to fill the city in. We've developed a 3-year plan. Building the palace was amazing and fun, but it was a lot of work and it was a lot of burden on financially and time-wise on a lot of people. So to do it every year was probably not feasible. But we do want to continue on doing things with snow and ice because this is such a nice community. We're going to do a nice festival to carry on what we had started there. Hans is going to do a throne and furniture and things. We're going to get some harvested ice again and build some things out of ice. And if you all have seen what Hans does, it'll be amazing because that's just what Hans does. And then north of the pavilion, we want to expand what we did there, have more ice sculptures. We're going to have professionals come in again and have a competition this year. So hopefully we get a few more teams. Last year, we kind of guided them to what we wanted based on who the major sponsors were. This year, we're going to let them let their creative juices flow and build whatever they want. And then we're going to expand the snow sculptures. Last year, it was the Detroit Lakes art class that we asked to come build the snow sculptures. This year, we're going to try to make it a competition with area schools, see if we can get Detroit Lakes and Frazee and Lake Park or whoever we can get that's interested in doing it. Detroit Lakes for sure. The art teacher there, Ms. Danner, said that it was such a fun, successful event that she wants. She only had her AP art class do it last year. She wants all of her art classes to do it this year. So we'll certainly have an uptick there and just getting more classes from Detroit Lakes. And then try to expand a little bit more of the playground area, have more things for the kids to do. Our theory being if we can get them not only to come, but get out of the cars and spend some time here, then they're gonna spend money here. You know, if they spend a couple hours wandering around outside with their kids or whatever, then it's time to get something to eat, it's time to get something to drink or whatever. So that's our plan.
So this will again be in coordination with Polar Fest. We are going to do a kickoff and a lighting ceremony to kick off Polar Fest. We're going to piggyback on the fireworks that happened. So similar to last year or this last spring. And so we'll be able to have a couple of different events, different activities for people to have a reason to come to town, hopefully multiple times, and even better that they stay overnight a couple of nights. So really still designing something. Then the next is that we're going to be doing this in 2019, 2020, gearing up for 150th anniversary for Detroit Lakes in 2021, and looking for a bigger and better palace than ever.
Okay, thank you very much. And I see you've got a large committee here. They've done a lot of work in the past, and it looks like they've got a lot of things planned in the future years. And the Polar Fest for this year is going to be February 8th through 18th. And so it's always a great time for the Lakes area. And thank you for all the work that you do with that. And we'll look for greater things from your committee. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, next item was C. It's a public hearing to give consideration for proposed assessments for unpaid street light fees of water, sewer, and storm water charges. I'm going to call on Kelsey to talk to us about that.
Mayor and council, in your packet, there's a list of basically our delinquent water sewer bills, totaling $2,217.40. Already have a public hearing for comment, the public hearing. And so choose, there's a resolution that adopts that as an assessment at 5
Okay, then is there a motion for consideration for the resolution adopting the assessment roll for unpaid streets, light, sewer, and stormwater charges? Is there a motion to do so? Okay, we'll have the hearing first. Excuse me. Any people in the audience that would like to come forward and have a question on this at all? Or okay, that closes. And anybody here from the council have any questions on that? Okay, no questions. And so then, is there a motion for consideration to resolution adopting the assessment roll for unpaid streets, lights, water, sewer, and stormwater charges?
So moved.
Second. And there's motion second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Moving on to item D. This is a public hearing to give consideration for a proposed for unpaid fire calls for 2017 and 18, and Kelsey, I'll have you speak to that also.
Again, Mayor and council, there's a list in your packet of delinquent fire call bills totaling $2,360. Notice that not all of those are sequenced to Detroit Lakes and state statute allows us to do an assessment even if it's outside of the city for fire calls. And just like the previous one, there's a resolution passed and adopt that assessment role.
Okay, with this being a public hearing, is anybody here with any questions or comments? Looks like there's none. This time we'll go to the council. Is there any questions or comments by the council members?
I do have a question, Kelsey. So if they're not part of the city and we assess them, what's our enforcement action on that? Is that through the township then?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
We can assess.
Okay, thanks. My question.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion for consideration to resolution adopting the assessment roll for the unpaid fire calls for 2017 and 18?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Moving on to item E, public hearing to give consideration to the proposed assessments for weed cutting for the year of 2018. I'll call on Brad Green. Update us on that.
Commissioner Zeman. Again, this is after receiving complaints and sending certified notification to the parties that we had to go in and abate the nuisance of our region. And as you see listed ahead for you, this was after public.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody in the public would like to come forward on this to have any questions or comments? It looks like none, so that is closed. Now we'll go to the councils. Any questions or comments by council members? Hearing none, is there a motion for consideration for a resolution adopting the assessment roll for weed cutting for the year of 2018?
So. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item F. Public hearing to give consideration to proposed assessment for diseased trees control for the year of 2018. Once again, I'll call on Brad Green.
Again, we do an annual inspection of the city proper, and these are trees that we found, and the parties are notified that they have to be removed within a time frame. They're given the option to either remove themselves or to have our city contractor remove it. And as you see before you, the list is the ones, the final assessment goals that they requested that we
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody in the public who would like to have questions or answers for this project? If not, the audience matter closes. Now to the city council. Do the council members have any questions or comments for Brad on this project? If not, is there a motion for consideration to a resolution adopting the assessment for diseased trees controls for the year 2018?
So.
There's a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Moving on to item G. Public hearing to give consideration to the proposed assessment for construction of curb gutter approaches and sidewalk improvements for the year of 2018. Brad Green, please.
Again, before you is a list of the projects that we do our annual sidewalk survey, look for hazard, trip falls, dysfunctional part of the infrastructure, and list before you is ones that we've got ahead done.
Okay, at this time, there's a public hearing. Does anybody else would like to speak about this project with questions or comments? Now it's time to come forward. Seeing none, audience is closed. At this time, we'll ask if there's anybody in the city council like to comment or ask questions about this. If not, is there a motion for consideration or resolution? Okay, there's a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. Moving on to number H, a public hearing to give consideration to change in the liquor license fees for 2018. Kelsey, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, giving an active resolution, adjusting the liquor license fees for 2019 for statute requiring a public hearing before we adjust those fees.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Does anybody in the audience like to have a question or comment about the fee increase? That closes. Is there any questions from the city council? If not, is there a motion for consideration of the resolution adopting the proposed changes to liquor license fees and amending section 210 of the city code, changing liquor license fees for the year 2019?
I'll move that, Your Honor.
Okay, we got a motion and there's a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. At this time, we'll call to order go back to our regular meeting, and I'll call on Bruce M. Holt for the Community Development Committee.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just make sure I get to the right spot here. Okay, consideration to the second reading and adoption of ordinance 433 rezoning Washington Avenue from Frazee Street to 4th Street from B3 Auto-Oriented Business District and RM Multifamily Residential District to a B1 Central Business District. This is the second reading. Again, Planning Commission, Community Development Committee recommend approval, and I so move.
There's motions, there a second?
Second.
Is there any comments? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Okay, and then the next item is consideration of resolution approving amendment to a joint resolution for an orderly annexation between Lakeview Township and the City of Detroit Lakes at 28499 Randolph Road. It's Marvin Finkelson. And Community Development Committee has reviewed this. Orderly annexation recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion is second. Any comments? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item C is consideration of resolution approving the vacating of a public road at the west end of London Road. That's the Bob and Joyce Spillman project. The Planning Commission as well as Community Development Committee reviewed this. Want to make sure that there's a road maintenance agreement with the township for that. Otherwise, the city, we recommend approval of the vacation, and I so move.
There's a motion to second. Motion is second. Any comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next item is consideration of resolution approving a variance to allow the north end of parking lot alongside the city sidewalk to have 4 parking spots are located at 303 Home Street. Justin Scary. This is a project that was previously granted a variance of from 13 required parking spots to 10. But because of some site changes they had to make with the watershed, there was a egress ingress on Holmes, and then a same thing on Minnesota Avenue. And because of the watershed plans, they had to take away the entrance off of Minnesota. So they had to build their parking lot a little further away from the, I believe it was, we required a 5-foot setback, and now they're right at the sidewalk line there. So the Planning Commission recommended, looked at this, thought it was a reasonable request and recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion is second. Any comments?
One thing I'd like to add, though, they did put bumpers in there, so they cannot go on the sidewalk. That'll be kept open. And 2, I believe at the CDC meeting, we discussed about contacting the owners there to see if they would be respectful enough and not park in the residential neighborhood and park in the public parking lot on the west side of the mall there.
Yes, good point.
Correct. And there's a huge parking lot, just kitty corner to this, so there is parking that people want to walk a little ways on it. But we got a motion and a second. Any other comments? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item E is consideration of a resolution approving a variance to allow an accessory structure to be more than 14 feet tall at 544 South Shore Drive, Richard Strand. I don't know if Mr. Strand is in the audience. Again, the Planning Commission and Community Development Committee looked at this and recommended approval. We did have a discussion about whether there was a living area above that garage now. Larry, did you ever?
I did talk with the owner about that. He said that it was that way when he got there, but he does not use that as a living space.
So I think recommends the approval of the variance, obviously without with a condition that it's not used as a living space, which is part of our city ordinance anyway. So with that requirement, I so move.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any comments on that? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next
I
item.
believe we did item F. So item G is consideration of a resolution approving the sale of Lot 2, Block 2 of the Detroit Lakes North Industrial Park First Edition to Minnesota Energy Resource Corporation. I maybe would ask Larry to just, I believe this is a development authority action, so maybe Larry, you could fill
Yes.
in a little bit on that.
The city council has authorized the development authority to sell lots in the industrial park, even though they are in the name of the city. They're in the name of the city only to maintain their tax exempt status. And so the development authority has historically sold these lots without having to consult the council. In this particular case, Minnesota Energy wanted a resolution from the property owner stating that they're willing to sell it. So that's why we have this specific resolution before you tonight.
With that, I would recommend approval of the resolution. I so move.
Second.
Motion and second. Any comments? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Item H is consideration of resolution declining to join in a joint airport zoning board as a city. I know Kelsey would love to, discuss this in great detail, but the bottom line is the Community Development Committee has reviewed this, recommends that we support the resolution to decline joining the joint airport zoning board, and I so move.
Second.
Some motion and second. Any comments? Not all in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, motion carries. Anything else, Bruce?
So, Your Honor, I just want to make a couple of notes as long as I have the floor here that the Plan Commission is not next week. It's November 29th for any council members that want to attend. We are not going to have a Planning Commission meeting in December, as that is a busy month and we've traditionally done that. And then the last thing is we are planning to have a shoreline ordinance meeting on December 3rd. For those of us that have been through the shoreline ordinance, if you're interested in coming, we're going to try to find a resolution with the DNR, but I can't promise that. But I just wanted to put it on the notice that if you want to come at 5 o'clock on December 3rd, you're welcome to do so. And that's all.
Thanks, Bruce. Okay, next item is Public Works. Jay.
So item A was just for discussion. Item B, consideration to a resolution approving a non-motorized recreational trail limited use permit number 0301-0018 with the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Public Works recommends approval and I so move.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any comments? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item C, consideration to a resolution setting a special assessment hearing for Lake Forest 7th Edition Street and Utility Improvement Project at the special council meeting on Thursday, the 29th of November at 5 p.m. Public Works recommends approval and I so move.
Second.
Been motion and a second. Any comments? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All, okay, no opposition, so motion carries.
Item D, consideration to a resolution setting a special assessment hearing for the Long Lake Annexation Phase 4 Sanitary Sewer and Water Main Improvement Project at the special council meeting on Thursday, the 29th of November at 2008 at 5 p.m. Public Works recommends approval and I so move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments?
Yeah, Ron, just, these hearings on the 29th, we need to make sure we have all the council present, or at least 8 council members?
Not for the adoption of the assessment rule.
Okay.
Any other comments? Not, we had a motion and a second, is that correct?
I can't remember.
Yes.
Yes. So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item E, consideration to a resolution setting a special assessment hearing for County Road 131 Sanitary Sewer and Water Main Improvements Project at the special council meeting on Thursday, the 29th of November at 5 p.m. Public Works recommends approval and I so move.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any comments, questions? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Item F, consideration to a resolution setting an improvement hearing for Randolph Road, Highland Drive on Tuesday, December 11th, 2018 at 5 p.m. Public Works recommends approval and I so move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any comments? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Item H, consideration to a resolution requesting a variance from standard for state aid operation for Willow Street. It says, oh yeah, we do have a separate resolution here. John, if you want to speak to this real quick, that'd be excellent.
Sure. We're gonna use some municipal state aid funding for street improvements on Willow Street. And when we do that, we have a specific set of design standards that we have to adhere to that are established in that. In this case, the hill that Willow was referencing earlier on the east end of Willow, that hill is at such a grade and a curve length that we can't meet the standard. So we have to formally request a variance from NDOT. This is part of the process.
Thank you very much. Public Works recommends approval and I so move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any comments? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Motion carries.
Nothing else, sir.
Okay, and I just want to comment that the Parade of Lights this year is going to be on Monday, November 26, 2018, and it usually happens around 5:30, so it's a big night for downtown. Okay, at this time, we'll go on to the Finance Committee. Dan Winter.
We already took care of item A, Your Honor, and item B was just discussion on the final tax levy for 2019. We'll take action on that next meeting and add nothing further.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to public safety. Matt Bulkey.
The only item we had on here was item 8A, and Kelsey or Glory, would you like to speak to this?
We had one business in Detroit Lakes that did not pass the tobacco compliance for 2018. The businesses have paid their fee, administrative fee. The employee that sold the tobacco has not paid their fee. So we'll be charging, the police department will be giving her a citation for not paying her administrative fee.
Perfect. Thank you. Upon that, there should be no action that we need to be taken.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll move to Liquor Gambling Control Committee. Jamie, please.
Item 9A is discussion only, no action. I will say that we are working through a list of items that came up during the committee meeting, or just kind of general public meeting regarding ordinances and so on, and maybe about that. Item 9B is consideration of a request from the Fuller Fest Committee for a cash donation for fireworks display on February 16th, 2019. As in previous years, the local Gambling Control Committee is recommending a donation of $400.
Second. There's motion and second to give $400 for the fireworks display. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And then, Madeline, do you have anything for the Public Utility Commission?
Yes, I'm gonna call on for now, Roberts to introduce our new wastewater supervisor.
Yes, Rod Bredesen. Rob, stand up, come up, say a few words about yourself. Rod Bredesen, our wastewater supervisor, starting today. Rod comes from Cambridge, Minnesota. We're glad to have him. So Rod, why don't you just update everybody on who you are?
Yeah, thank you.
Please come up to the podium. Come up to the podium where the mic is, please.
Sorry. Be quiet. So, yeah, married. I'm up here staying at in a guy's basement right now, but we'll be looking for a place coming up. My wife is back in Cambridge. I have 3 kids, 2 married, 1 gonna get married in September, 1 grandbaby, and 1 on the way. So happy to be here.
Okay,
Busy
thank
community,
you.
a lot of stuff going on.
Welcome. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to commend you on your first day one of putting in the extra hours, so thank you.
Okay, I'm looking over here for items for discussion, just for information, a public discussion on the 2019 budget and tax levy pursuant to the truth and taxation requirement will take place at the City Council meeting on December 11th, 2018 at 6:01 p.m. sharp. Also, I want to mention that the Canadian Pacific Holiday Train will again be coming to Detroit Lakes on Thursday, December 13th at 2:30 in the afternoon, and they come with the train all lit up with Christmas colors, and they have live music, and it's all to help the food pantry. And every year they've been presenting us with a check, and a lot of people bring a lot of food, so it's a great event. We invite everybody to come to that on December 13th, Thursday, right on Home Street by the railroad track, so you can't miss it. Also, I want to mention here the special congratulations to the city council people who were reelected. Dan Winter from Ward 1, Jay Sherman from Ward 2, Matt Bulkey from Ward 3, Madeline Suki at large, and last but not least, our newly elected alter lady is Natalie Bly, who will be alternate at large, and we look forward to working with Natalie coming here in January. And also want to give a special thanks to the voters of Detroit Lakes for helping pass the half-cent sales tax for our new police department. And also, I want to say a special thanks to the voters that helped pass the referendum for repairing our schools and giving us a new look for the schools. And thank the voters for all of that on it. And also want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and hope they have a great time with their friends and families. And at this time, I'm going to start with Dan and for last comments.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Nothing further.
One question for Mr. Roberts and the Utilities Commission is how are we doing with the wastewater treatment?
Fantastic.
Perfect, thank you.
About 28% complete as of a couple of weeks ago, about $7.8 million into it. Really starting to see it take shape now when you go by there, set of precast concrete, and it's starting to look like structures and buildings. So we set our first piece of equipment on October 18th, the fine screening and the treatment building. So we're trying to get as much concrete done as they can, so we go inside and we're looking at probably start up a VMDR facility itself sometime, possibly second quarter of 2019.
Thanks, Mr. Roberts.
Did Rob know that we were doing that?
He heard a rumor about it.
You know, I forgot to mention too, and I should have when Bruce was speaking, but we went over the $50 million mark for building permits in Detroit Lakes this year, and we're going to set a record. And it's been a great year for Detroit Lakes, and a lot of things going on with businesses, new homes, and we're pretty lucky that we have these conditions. Detroit Lakes, a lot of communities wish they were as lucky as we are. Jay?
Nothing further.
Yeah, my congratulations to those that were reelected, and also a thank you to Barb Voss. I know she's here for another meeting or so, couple, but thank you for your service on the council. We miss you.
Kelsey, you have anything you'd like to say?
Just a reminder, we have that special council meeting on November 29th.
Okay, Larry, anything?
Nothing else.
How's the liquor store doing? I know we're doing well there. We're doing excellent there. And Brad?
We're doing just fine.
Okay, we're all set. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.